And you are welcome along. It's our penultimate trader chat before the Cheltenham Festival of 2021 with Johnny Ward and Flynn Goward. And it's been a good few weeks for the show. It's obvious that controversy sells because we'd like to thank you all for watching and listening last week. It was by far the most popular trader chat we've had so far, Flynn, even though the circumstances weren't exactly maybe what we would want in terms of getting a lot of people to listen, but obviously people wanted to listen. It's been a mad week.
Yeah, and to be honest, I'm quite happy to see the back of it. It was a really difficult week for the sport, and it doesn't just end this week. I know we're speaking about it just before we've come on here. It doesn't just end this week. It's obviously going to have huge ramifications going forward, not just for Gordon, but in terms of the sport as a whole. I'm sure we're going to hear about it during Cheltenham, but at least with these really good horses running at Cheltenham, even though Gordon's not going to be on the named trainer on the licence, I think that's the right way to go. Having these horses run, so we see the best compete, and hopefully when we do get to Cheltenham next week, the horses will put on the show rather than the people.
We want to mention Davey Russell's blog, which has just gone up on the Star Sports website this morning, starsports.bet.co.uk, and it's very, very interesting reading, and it's broken down into sections, including that photo and my terrible TV appearance. And obviously, Davey was on RT Primetime last week, more or less in the middle of the Gordon Elliott crisis. Didn't perform to his best, but he wasn't riding a horse, and he was in a very tricky situation, and he confronts that in a very interesting blog today, Flynn.
Yeah, he does. I think it was quite evident when you saw Davey, obviously our brand ambassador, on prime time last week. Obviously, would have been seen over in Ireland more than over here. But I think it was the day that the Cheveley Park horses left the yard. And obviously, that was a devastating time when Envoy Len's leaving, Quilixios, Ballyadam, etc. When his horses are leaving the yard for the stable lasses and lads. For Gordon and for Davey, obviously. So him going to doing that show, I think he actually talks about it in the blog that in hindsight he probably shouldn't have done it, and he was really nervous. So it's a really upfront blog, really worth a quick read. It's not hugely long or anything, but there are some really good insights in there just to get a bit of context on what actually happened last week in his sport. So go and have a look on the content site and give that a read after you've watched this, though.
After you watch this, yeah, and he talks about Denise Foster as well, who's taken over the license. I just want to ask you about her because Lee Mottershead's comments on the Nick Luck show on Sunday. I'm not on social media nowadays. I don't necessarily look in terms of what's reaction, but I imagine there was a strong reaction to this because, Lee Mottershead basically imploring the yard not to have runners at Cheltenham in any guise or under any name at the moment, to me was strange.
Yeah, there was a huge reaction on Twitter, actually. I can completely understand when you strip back Lee Mottershead's point. I can completely understand it. It would probably be better for the sport as a whole if there were no runners, because we know that the major news outlets will run with these stories. Even if Sneezy Foster is having winners, we know that that's going to be plastered on front pages or back pages saying Gordon Elliott, who's actually banned, has trained a winner, even though he's not on the licence. So I do understand the point he's trying to make in terms of the perception and the way that it could go. But I don't think that you can ask owners to voluntarily not run their horses at Cheltenham when they essentially run the sport in terms of the money that's pumped in. I mean, the majority of owners, if not all of owners, don't earn off the sport, really. It's all for passion. And I just don't think that you can ask that of these owners. He also said that he didn't want a body to step in and force it upon them. He would ask them to voluntarily not run their horses. I'd completely disagree with that. And I think the reaction on the Twitter sphere, even though you're not on there, Johnny, resoundingly kind of said that yesterday as well. And I think that the sport as a whole, when we start to worry too much about perception, I think that's the first road to actually killing the sport. I think that we need to showcase it rather than worry about what we're showcasing. Just showcase the really good stuff, the best horses running. And if these owners started holding their horses back voluntarily, then we wouldn't be showcasing the best horses around, would we?
We wouldn't, and I completely agree with you, really, by and large, that, Gordon Elliott he should be in the process of some sort of rehabilitation at the moment in terms of, his career as well. But at the same time, I want to see Envoy Lane at Cheltenham. And if Envoy Lane is barred from running at Cheltenham because of his trainer sitting on a dead horse 2 or 3 years ago, just doesn't sit right at all with me. Let's get to the weekend. Newbury and Kelso, obviously. The shunter, again, doing the job at Kelso from my friend Paul Byrne, has been an amazing success story. We also will talk a bit more about Gordon Elliott or just the Cheltenham markets. Obviously, we've had a shake-up there in terms of some of the markets, some of his horses were in doubt. They will run there, but we will have some very, very interesting markets. Just talking about Saturday, Newbury and Kelso, how did it go?
Yeah, so just starting with Kelso, we'll start with the shunter. Obviously, you're saying that your friend owns the shunter and he's going to be going for the big bonus at Cheltenham. I mean, trying to predict what race he's actually going to go for is probably the hardest task of all, because it seems like he's entered in every single race possible. He was a bad result for us in the Moor Battle Hurdle, battled on really well, pardon the pun, for the race as well. We laid him 6-1 anti-post for the race, as well as on the day when he won at 5-2. Like I just said, he's going to be going for the bonus. He's got loads and loads of entries. I think he's probably shortest for a chase, actually. So even though he won the Moor Battle Hurdle at the weekend at Kelso, I think it's actually shortest for the Grand Annual. We will come on to that in just a bit, because we'll have a spin through all the handicaps.
The interesting about the Grand Annual, he actually he ran a great race at Leopardstown last time over fences. He's lightly raced over fences, which would be a problem. My issue with him at Cheltenham is that he had a hard race on Saturday, and it is another hard race at Leopardstown as well. And he obviously won the Great Wood. He's had some tough races this season, but he's well handicapped over fences, no doubt.
Yeah, it might be a case that he's just better over hurdles, though, because he obviously got beat at the Dublin Race Festival, even though running a good race, and then obviously won really well at the weekend. And he'd also won at Cheltenham previously over hurdles, hadn't he? So it could be a case that he is well handicapped, or he is just better over hurdles. But either way, they'll be going for the bonus, and very good luck to him. It'd be a good story to headline the week. Also, Kelso, there were two other races to touch on. I just want to speak about My Drogo quickly. I thought he was really impressive in the Premier Novices Hurdle. He won at 2-1 for Richard Kelvin Hughes and Harry Skelton. It was a really poor result in the race for us. He was a hefty loser. He doesn't go to Cheltenham. It might be because he looks a little bit novice-y, but if he was in a Supreme Novice Hurdle, I mean, I'd definitely be backing him. Obviously, price dependent, but before the entry stages that came out recently, he was entered and he was 20-1 or so. He wouldn't be that price now. He would be much shorter. I think the Supreme would have suited him down to the ground. Strong pace, big field, can kind of swoop him from behind. I thought he would have been perfect for it, but they're obviously saving him for a later day, probably going to be a chaser in the making. And then the last one to touch on from Kelso would be Cloth Cap. Really impressive from the front in the listed Premier Chase. ASO just couldn't get on terms. It was a really classy performance from Cloth Cap. He was a pretty level result in the book for us, to be fair. ASO and Super Gold would have been the losers there. He was 14-1 for the Grand National Cloth Cap, now 6-1 for the Grand National when we get to Aintree time. He was really impressive. Obviously, he's not going to get a hike in the weights for what he just did at the weekend, because the weights came out previously. If he gets good ground, that seems to be the key to him, and he's also a fantastic jumper. So it could be the Trevor Hemmings, Many Clouds or Hedge Hunter colours in the winners' enclosure come Aintree anyway. Just one more.
Yeah, the big handicap chase at Newbury looked pretty impossible. How did it go for you, punting-wise? Yeah,
that's the only one I wanted to touch on, really. Umbragada was a good result in the book for us in the Greywood Gold Cup handicap chase. We actually laid Born Survivor and the Big Bite here, which is obviously great for us in terms of what the Big Bite did after the last kind of hung left in like champ style when he was at Newbury and tried to run out.
Scorpion.
Yeah, typical Scorpion. The Might Bite's clearly coming out in there. He completely threw it away. Umbragada was clipped into 12-1 for the Paddy Power Plate at Cheltenham. So those are just a couple of races from the weekend, but I really want to get stuck into the Cheltenham specials and the Cheltenham handicaps now, Johnny.
Yes, well, get stuck in, Flynn. I'm not going to hold you back here. This is an exciting time to be a trader. You're only a young man. You've got your whole life ahead of you. This time last year, you were preparing to stand at the track like the good men and women who have come before you and laid bets at the track to people. They exchange money, they exchange chat. That doesn't happen at the moment, but we will have lots of markets online. And what are you looking forward to at the moment? And what do you think punters will be most intrigued in terms of the markets that Star Sports has at the moment?
I think in terms of the specials market, it will definitely be the Prestbury Cup handicap market, which we'll get onto in just a second. Normally at this time of the year, just before Cheltenham, I'll be kind of scrambling around, sorting out all the staff accommodation, all the staff that we have working, the fantastic staff that we have working on course for us. Shout out to them quickly. And then I'll be prepping all the equipment, loading the van. It'll be a real busy time, but instead of using my energy for that this year, obviously not going, put all of the energy into the Cheltenham specials. So got a few markets to spin through here. There's a lot of talk this year about how many winners Ireland are going to have. They think that they're going to, the Irish are going to absolutely trounce the Great British horses, and obviously the French in the cross country. So what we've done is, instead of just pricing up the Prestbury Cup, where you're going to see like 5-1 on Ireland, we've actually done a handicap. So we've given Ireland We've given GB a 6-winner head start. So Great Britain +6 is even money. Ireland -6 is 6-5, and the tie is 8-1. And there's been some real talk about this amongst the traders. We've also had punters coming on as well, where both sides are being bet here. So hopefully we've got the line right. I was actually leaning towards 5.5, 5. Whereas the other kind of traders and actually head of trading was leaning a little bit towards the other way. And just to let you know, in terms of recent results, obviously we've had the Presbyterian Cup since 2014. Great Britain have won it twice. Ireland have won it 4 times. And it's been a tie once. That's back in 2019. So just looking at recent years, it was the widest margin win from Ireland in 2017, where it was 19 wins to 9. And then last year it was 17 wins to 10. So if you're looking at kind of recent results, last year Ireland won by 7. The year before that it was a tie, so 14 each. The year before that Ireland won by 6. The year before that they won by 10. So maybe that -6 could look a bit of value there at 6-5. So a real interesting market to check out there. I'm not sure your thoughts on it, Johnny. How many winners Ryan are going to have? Are they going to beat England by 6 or more?
Obviously, to do this bet, you really need to go through each of the markets and kind of come up with the proper percentages. Otherwise, you're just speculating, really, and that's not something I'm going to do here. But I do think it is a very good bet for an interest because, I wouldn't necessarily advise that you have a bet on every race at Cheltenham. You can't have an opinion on every race. Some of them just are no-bet races, whereas with this, a bit like back in the champion jockey market or whatever, you have an interest in every race. Maybe beyond patriotism, we should talk in the future about why there's a situation where Ireland is now hot favourite to win the Presbyterian Cup, which should not be the case, whether we like it or not. Britain should be winning this, and back in the day, Britain would have been 100 to 1 on to win this, or 1,000 to 1 on. There's obviously a wider context there, but it's a market well worth having a look at because if you're not keen on taking the Irish odds, which are probably Ireland are probably bankers, this gives you a much more feasible interest at sort of an even money price. So it's a good market to get involved in, and it does take a bit of work from the traders as well, Flynn, because you can't just come up with something off the top of your head here.
No, and just while we're on the topic of that, I've kind of spun through the Presbyterian Cup in terms of the handicap market we've done, but I've also priced up some Presbyterian Cup match bets within the races themselves. So you'll see this if you go to the anti-post tab on the website or the app and then go to Cheltenham specials, it's all under there. So I've priced up a match bet in the Supreme, in the Arkle, in the Champion Hurdle, in the Ballymore, the Champion Chase, the Marsh, the Ryanair, the Stayers, the Triumph, and the Gold Cup. So just to give you an idea of what that looks like. In the Gold Cup, for example, Great Britain at 5-4 and Ireland at 4-6. So obviously, kind of a lot of maths and percentages goes into these when we kind of price them up, but it's pretty fair in terms of the margins, I think there. So just some interesting ones there, and then I just want to speak about a couple more specials we've got priced up on the same page. Which festival day will have the highest cumulative winning distance? So we go 5-2 Tuesday, 11-4 Wednesday, 11-4 Thursday, and 3-1 Friday. There's been a bit of interest for Wednesday there. People thinking that Monkfish will obviously go in and do the business at a wide margin, and you've got the cross country on that day as well, which tends to produce a bit of a high margin. But we're 11-4 there, and Tuesday is the Jolly. We've got total cumulative winning distance for the week at Banded, and then just one other market. Which horse will have the shortest SP at the Cheltenham Festival? Envoy Elen is 13-8. Monkfish 7-4, Chacun Pour Soir 3-1, Shishkin is 7s, and Concertista 10-1. So a bit of an interesting market there in terms of what is going to SP the shortest out of those horses. If you don't want to take the skinny odds about Envoy Elen, you could take 13-8 that he's going to go off shorter than the other 4 horses. So just some interesting markets to get stuck into there before we spin through the Cheltenham handicaps.
Yeah, let's get through the handicaps. And obviously, a lot of short prices in the graded races. The handicaps, it's probably been a year where I haven't looked at them as much as other years, but there are some interesting kind of Irish marks, I think, over there. I thought Stefani got in reasonably lightly in the Boodles, but what do you like?
So I will spin through all of them just really, really quickly just in terms of what's happened since the weights have been released. We've seen horses shortening up. Look, with these markets, it doesn't take much money to shorten prices in anti-post markets, even at Cheltenham. It really doesn't. It cons on quite quickly. So when you see one shortening into 6 from 12, it's not a huge amount of money. It's normally some news that's broke or somebody's tipped it up, etc. So just as quickly spin through them. So the Ultima, so Happy Go Lucky is now the favourite at 6-1. We laid 10s and 8s after what the weights were released. Now clear favourite. Lieutenant Rocco would be pretty popular there as well. Now 7-1. But we've laid 10s there. Be interesting to see if he goes because he's also got an entry in the Brown Advisory Novice Chase to take on Monkfish. I'd be absolutely amazed if he went there in terms of placing. I know that he's a novice going into a handicap, but it just seems mental to send a horse for a race at the Cheltenham Festival 33-1, where you can send him for a race where he's sevens. One more that's been supported has been I Right in that race. We've laid 20-1 and 18-1. He's now 12-1 poke. He was clipped in after Cloth Cap obviously boosted the Ladbroke Trophy form when he won at the weekend. So those will be the moves in the Ultima on the Tuesday. You spoke about the Boodles just there, Johnny. The ones that have been shortening have been Who Grease. I think I pronounced that right. I've probably completely butchered it, but we'll crack on anyway. That's a Paul Nicholls horse. He's obviously got a fantastic record in the race. We see it a lot with Paul Nicholls horses for this race, where he just gets them out early, gets them a mark, and then puts them away. And he seems to have done it with this one. He's now 6-1, laid as big as 16s. Saint Sam was the other one for Willie Mullins. He's been given £3 on top of his Irish mark. He was bet 7-1, and he's now a 5-1 poke. And then one more for the race would be Bustleton. I think he's a Joseph O'Brien horse. I think he's got form that ties in with Saint Sam. But those would be the free for money in the Boodles. In the Coral Cup, the only horse we've seen money for has been Botox Has, the Gary Moore charge, laid at 25-20s. He's now 16-1 for the race. He's got a lot of Cheltenham experience and seems to be laid out for it. The Grand Annual, one of the most interesting races, I think, and we've seen the most activity probably in this race. We laid Us and Them heavily last week. He'd be a huge loser for us in this handicap. So even though I'm saying it doesn't take much to move these markers, we saw a lot of money for Us and Them. And then another two Joseph O'Brien horses that have been interesting in the markets has been Intukas, who is 7s from 10s, and Embittered 8s from 10s. I don't know if you've got any insight to those horses, obviously being over your side of the pond, Johnny, the Joseph O'Brien charges in that race.
Yeah, all I would say is he hasn't had a particularly great season, or particularly great year so far. His stats have kind of leveled off a bit, Joseph. So that will be interesting. But I think I'm going to spend the next week properly getting into the handicaps, because it's something I've neglected. And last week, I mean, just didn't have time to do anything, you know yourself.
Yeah, of course. Just one more horse to touch on in that race would be Sky Pirate. He's been completely friendless in the anti-post market, even though he is favourite. Really peculiar campaigning of that horse. So he's been completely friendless, and it's been the Joseph O'Brien ones that have been popular. The Shunters also entered in that race, but God knows where he will go. Now we're on to the Potemps. Imperial Alcazar strengthened at the top of the market here. He was 8-1. Now he's a 5-1 shot. We've laid as big as 14s back in January, Imperial Alcazar, for the Imperial Commander colours. He'll look to win the race after winning a qualifier, which is quite unusual for this race. Normally you see them staying on into 5th or 6th in their qualifier, and then they come and dot up in this. But I thought he was valued for the winning distance the last day, and he would be one of my better bets in the handicap. I'd really fancy him. I think he's probably a graded horse in the handicap. The boss is Oscar for Gordon Elliott, got £8 higher than his Irish mark, but he's still being punted. We laid 16s about him last year, then 12s. We still see money for him, and he's now 6-1 second favourite. And then just one more, there was a bit of talk about this horse on Twitter. That's Linwood Gold, was the other one for money, laid at 16s, and he's now a 10 poke. Moving on to the Paddy Power Plate, probably the quietest one of the week. We've seen some nibbles from Mr. Whitaker, obviously some fantastic festival form and Cheltenham form. He won the Close Brothers Novice Chase a few years ago. He's now 16 for the race and really likeable. The Kim Muir Morning Vicar would be the biggest loser there for us. We've laid at 25s. He's now 18s. We've also seen money for Kilford and Cross at 25-1. He's now 20. And then Time to Get Up is the favourite there at 11-2. We laid a little bit at 7-1 after the weights came out, and he's very likely to go off favourite. So just money for him there. And then just one more to touch on from the Kim Muir would be Dees Abba. I know David Jennings was talking really sweetly about him last week on their show. He was 20-1, now 14-1. Ran a really strong race last year, finishing 5th in the Kim Muir, and looks to be a stronger horse and a stronger stayer now. So that one might be worth a look. And just getting on to the last two races of the week, you've got the County Hurdle and the Martin Pipe. The Shunter, again, the Shunter's been spoke about for a handicap. He was popular after his win yesterday for the County. We laid 14-1 after the race for this race. The really interesting one that's shown up here, and I think this is probably one of the most interesting for the week in terms of handicaps, and that's Ganapathy. That's the Willie Mullins novice. Form ties in with Galliard de Mensil. He ran in that 2 mile 6 race. He was 16-1. He's now 10-1 with us, but we keep seeing him supported. Just be wary with him because he is entered for the Martin Pipe, or he could still go the novice route. But I think if he turned up in the county, I think he'd be chucked in off his mark. And I think the race on bare ground would really suit him. And just the last one to talk about, sorry, Johnny, I know I've just gone on and on and on about the handicaps here, but the last one would be the Martin Pipe. It's been a very quiet affair in the Martin Pipe. Gentleman to me, we laid at the back of January at 16-1. You wouldn't mind that docket now, as he's now a 7 poke. There are a lot of horses that could go here, as well as other races like wide receiver Ganapathy, for example. So it's still a bit of a murky picture in terms of where they will go in the handicaps, but that would just be a quick spin through of where we currently sit and the money we've seen for horses after the weights were released.
Excellent stuff. So much to look forward to over the next week and a half or so with Cheltenham coming up. We're going to just talk about the football now, Flynn. It was a remarkable weekend. The demise of Liverpool is quite staggering, really. I was surprised that the price Leicester were at Brighton to an extent. I was a bit surprised that Liverpool were even 4-9 or whatever they were against Fulham. But at the same time, they should be winning a game like that. But mainly the big surprise is Manchester United doing a bit of an assassination job, really, on Manchester City.
Yeah, it was a weird performance from City, I thought. It's not had a huge impact in the outright market. City is still 1 to 250 to win the title, with United being 80-1. It was a good result for us, though. We laid City, so we were happy to see United go and get the job done. You were just talking about Liverpool, but we can't talk about Liverpool in terms of the outright market because they're 500-1 when they should really be $1 million. But we can talk about the top 4 market, which seems to be hotting up. So you've got United there at 10 on, so obviously they're very short. And then you go 2-5 Chelsea, 8-15 Leicester, 5-2 Spurs, 3-1 Liverpool, and 4-1 Everton. That's just madness to think that it looks heavy odds on that Liverpool won't be getting a top 4 place. But the way they're playing at the moment, you'd think that that's very likely that they won't be. And we also just spoke about Fulham there. Obviously, they did a job at the weekend on Liverpool. So just talking about the relegation battle, you've obviously got Sheffield United are 1 to 100, so they're pretty much down. West Brom are 1 to 50, they're pretty much down as well. And then you go even money Newcastle, and then 13-8 Fulham, 7-2 Brighton. So that third spot for who's going to go down looks like it's hotting up as well. Pretty tight there in the betting, but Fulham are the ones showing the recent form, aren't they?
Yeah, fair play to Fulham, and would have been more or less written off at the start of the season. We're hot favourites of the lot. It's a hell of a result, and they've been on great run. Lots of kudos to Scott Parker, and even going to Anfield restricted. Liverpool, their lack of goals, even shots on target, it's incredible to think how much they've fallen. But Fulham were there to take advantage of that, and they've given themselves a real chance. Whereas Newcastle now do look to be under serious pressure.
Yeah, they do. And Scott Parker wears some fantastic garments, doesn't he? I mean,
he does. He's a slick dude.
That moody coat he was wearing last week was class. I just want to quickly touch on the goals contributions market because Harry Kane's now gone favourite for that market after his performance yesterday. 4 contributions. He's up to 29 contributions, and he's 6-4. Bruno Fernandes eased out to 15-8, even though Bruno obviously getting a goal and scoring a penalty as per. He's one behind Harry Kane now on 28. And then you jump back to Salah at 7-1, who's on 21 contributions. So that might be a 2-runner heat now between Harry Kane and Bruno Fernandes. So markets get stuck into there in terms of the football.
Let's finish up with the golf. The man Bryson getting the job done in the Arnold Palmer.
He did indeed. He got the job done over in Orlando. He was a decent loser in the book, unfortunately, whereas Lee Westwood, who pushed him all the way, would have been a healthy winner for us. And what a time it would have been for Lee Westwood, obviously having York Hill going and winning that handicap and then going and win this event. It would have been fantastic, but it wasn't to be for him, even though he was fantastic on Sunday. The course played hugely difficult yesterday, actually. So pretty much everybody was over par, with the last par 4 actually playing harder than a par 5. So it was a real good watch, but Bryson went and got the job done there. We've got the Players' Championship this week, so lots to look forward to this week. DJ is your 12-1 favourite there, joint favourite with Rory McIlroy, who played pretty well in the Arnold Palmer, although kind of bombing out yesterday. So a lot to look forward to this week in terms of the golf, and then we're not too far away from the Masters and Cheltenham next week. Can't wait, Johnny.
Yeah, and just to reiterate that it is worth checking out the Davey Russell vlog. And a big plug we're going to give for the live preview night this week. That's on Wednesday at starsports.bet for Cheltenham. I'll be involved in that with some of the greats of the game at Star Sports, including Luke Tarr. And we're going to have a bit of crack. And I don't know, Flynn, it's been a strange one, but it's still Cheltenham. There's still a lot of good races to be had. And this is actually my first preview night. Normally I would have had 10 of them done by now.
Yeah, well, normally we do a lot of preview nights, so it's weird for us to just be doing one as well. But I'm sure it'll be good crack. I always enjoy the preview circuit. They always get a lot of stick preview nights, but I always enjoy watching them with a couple of beers and stuff. So I'll be looking forward to watching you on the box on Wednesday evening, Johnny.
And so when we have our big Zoom Cheltenham preview on Wednesday night with Davey Russell, Bill Esdale, Luke Tarr, and also David Pipe, we're going to talk about a lot of the Cheveley Park horses and just that whole situation and so forth. We have an interesting market on this as well, Flynn, in terms of this has been a hell of a shake-up. And I do feel genuinely sorry for Gordon Elliott that he's seen a horse as beautiful as Envoy Alain just leave his yard, leave his box probably forever.
Yeah, and what I think is going to be really interesting is when we actually get to the day and what the prices do then. Just in terms of an update of what the prices have done in terms of these horses that have moved from Gordon and have gone to other yards. Envoy Leonard's, he actually went out, I think he went out to about 196, maybe even bigger for the Marsh, but then he's shorn back in now pretty much to where he was. Now he's obviously settling into Henry de Bromhead's. There's not been a huge amount of change for Ballyadam. Quilixios obviously strengthened on the back of French Seal, not been able to go to the Triumph now, so he shortened up for that. But the one that has really shortened since moving yards, which I think is really interesting, is Sir Gerhard. Sir Gerhard for the champion bumper was around the 11-4, 5-2 mark before he moved from Gordon Elliott to Willie Mullins. He's now top price 2-1, and he is 2-1 with us as well, Sir Gerhard. I think there's quite a lot of stable confidence about him, and maybe him moving from Gordon Elliott and going to Willie Mullins, the cat was out the bag potentially. I'm completely allowed here, but
it's an interesting one because maybe how quickly is he able to assume he's better than Kilcruit? Or is Kilcruit like maybe a little bit flattered by what happened at Leopardstown? It's very interesting because it was a fairly quick thing to latch on to market wise.
Yeah. He was the one that really shortened up, and he was really strong in the market, Sir Gerhard. So that is the one to take out in terms of the Cheveley Park horses moving across. And I think that we just need to touch on Galvin quickly because some news has just broken out Galvin, hasn't it? So stable change for Galvin. So it looks like he's left Gordon Elliott and he's now with Ian Ferguson. And you could probably give us a bit more of a backstory on Ian Ferguson than I can, Johnny, anyway.
Yeah, obviously would have been known with having had Simon Sequin earlier in his life before he joined Nicky Henderson. He's a northern trainer who's been heavily involved in the point-to-point scene, very, very much respected. I think we were just speculating that maybe this happens. It potentially happened while there was some doubt over what was going to happen with the LA runners. That doubt obviously prevailed until last Friday evening, until this judgment came out, and I wouldn't be worrying about it if I back Galvin, put it that way.
Okay, good stuff. He's 3-1 Galvin for the National Hunt Chase. Like you said, it wouldn't surprise me at all if this was kind of arranged earlier. This has been Galvin's target for ages. They're just targeting him at this race. Some interesting news this week with the money for Royal Pagaille for the National Hunt Chase as well. We're on that race. He's now 13-8 to go there, and you'd think that if he does go, he could be odds on because he's so highly rated. He seems to be really well suited for the race. But the ground will be the thing for him. Will it be good ground? Obviously, he's only ever run on soft or heavy ground. Galvin, I think, is just tailor-made for the race. And even though moving to Ian Ferguson, you saying that it's not a negative is a positive for me anyway.
Thanks a million for that, Flynn.
Thank you.
Yeah, and this time next week we'll be on the eve of the Cheltenham Festival. I imagine Zana here will be there, and all the Gordon Elliott runners, despite what some may think. We won't be there, but we'll try to be there in spirit, and we'll update you on what gambles have taken place between now and then. Talk to you next week.